Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on demand care for common ailments such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org. Idaho lost more than 2,000 farms over a 5-year period. Idaho Matters wants to know how that's impacting farmers, cities, and counties. Listen to our series on farming called Land and Legacy. Episodes available on Monday afternoons through November 17th in the Idaho Matters podcast feed. From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. Today, we're taking a chilling detour through the misty forests and rugged coastlands of the Pacific Northwest, as this region is steeped not just in fog, but in folklore and the unexplained. Author S.E. Schlosser brings this world to life in her latest book, Spooky Pacific Northwest, tells of hauntings, strange happenings, and other local lore. And S.E., also known as Sandy, is joining us now to talk more. Sandy, really nice to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
So, what drew you to focus this latest book on the Pacific Northwest?
Oh, the Pacific Northwest is probably one of my favorite places to be. It is full of mystery. It is, I mean, everything from those wonderful foggy mornings and then the sun comes out and lifts everything. Oh my gosh. And you're just like it sparkles. It's like the world just comes to life and you're like, wow, anything can happen in this place. The folklore is absolutely utterly amazing. I mean, from Alaska all the way down. You have some of the most spectacular coastlines, but then you go over the mountains and you're in the desert and you have from the channeled scablands right all the way through Washington to the John Day fossil
Mm-hmm.
beds. And I've been living in Idaho because I'm doing Idaho both for Rocky Mountains, which is coming out next year, and just from Pacific Northwest. And the folklore of Idaho around the mining camps and
Mm-hmm.
all of the gold rushes that came through there to just, I mean, some of the early stories of Bigfoot come out of Idaho from the Salish. And they had a name for him, like it was the pre-runner for Sasquatch. I can't even say it right, so I won't. Yeah, I won't try. But it's spelled it's has a Q in it, so it's Ses K, something like that. And so forgive me if I can't say it right, but I have to write it out. It's even got an apostrophe in it. I'm like, that's like from the 1800s. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
This is like, yeah, the 1800s people were still referring to the wild man that we now turned into Bigfoot lore and Sasquatch. But the Salish have been talking about this for thousands of years.
Hmm.
They'd already had
So,
this as part of their lore. It was amazing. And so, yeah, I was just looking that detail up from Idaho. There's some stories in the Pacific Northwest book that we're talking about today. The
mhm.
particular story that we wrote was from Washington State. Um, but there'll be another one in Rocky Mountains next year as well. So it's all the lore of Bigfoot, Sasquatch is all the way through the land. So very cool.
So, how do you find and choose which local legends to retell?
I like to find a lot of the old ones that are sort of being lost. Boy, it's like even doing a Google search now versus 10 years ago. Whole different sets of whole swaths of folklore that used to be available online are no longer anywhere that you can easily find. So I love the urban legends, and you get a lot of folklore discussions on things like Reddit and places. But I tend to be the one who's like interviewing family members who have passed down a story for like 4 or 5 generations inside big old folklore archives like the one down in Eugene. Getting all dusty as I go through papers like of school paper assignments where it's the only time was the children were asked to interview parents or
Mm.
grandparents about the lore of their area. And so, and everywhere in between, all the old records, newspapers are a great source of old folklore and ghost stories and spooky. So once you get a big list, I mean, sometimes my list is of almost 1,000 stories long for the region. Then I start, I visit often, I talk to people, I start to understand the stories that really resonate with the heart as much as
Mhm.
possible of the region. So each one is carefully chosen to reflect Idaho or Washington or Oregon through the eyes of the people who live there and love it. And to them, when you talk about a story, um, that comes from Portland, it has a certain feel to it versus one that's coming from Boise, right? It's just
Hmm.
everybody's got that hometown vibe that they recognize, and I try to honor that as much as possible and try to find something that reflects both the history that you will understand and also the feel of what it's like to live there, and also give people who are coming to visit a sense of place. That's sort of
What
if I put all those things together, it really narrows into a very unique set of stories.
was there a particular story in this latest book that may have given you some chills while writing it?
There are almost always stories that give me chills. So some of them are more like it just depends on the type of chills. Like the Mad Logger came out of Lincoln County in Oregon, and that one's your very traditional, like, run through the forest, something scary is chasing me. So that's one set of chills. One of the ones that I really enjoyed um, was the steak and eggs story. It's coming right out of Spokane, and that gave me chills from a different perspective because it was a couple in need driving through town way back in like the 1920s, and they had like almost no money. Like they're so hungry, they still had, almost a half day to go to get to the coast of Washington, and they saw this little sign that said steak and eggs at a diner attached to a hotel, a little motel type thing, and they're in this old car, and they're like, okay, is there any money anywhere? Like checking the dashboard under the seats, right? And so they got in, they had like $5 to spend, right? and,
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
waitress gave them like a double platter. And so they went when they got home, it was enough to sustain them to get home. And when they got home, they were bragging on this wonderful place. And it turns out it had burned down 2 years before they went through that
What?
part of Spokane. And so it was like that diner had just appeared for that moment for their needs, almost like they went back in time. So it's just that gives me goosebumps in a totally different way from being terrified by, and again, a mad
Uh,
logger chasing you through the woods, totally,
yeah.
totally scary. I mean, that's definitely something that you really, want to read about, but not actually have happen to you type of thing.
So
So
do you have a personal favorite ghost story, whether it's from this book or somewhere else that stays with you?
one of the things that I like, as a storyteller, I do storytelling occasionally as well. So one of the ones that I really like a lot is called Taily Poe. It's also been known as Hairy Toe, or it's one of the ones where um, in the folklore tradition where the wording is repeated over and over as the creature or the monster is getting closer and closer, so it's like all I want's my taily po is being repeated over and over again, and you hear a scratching sound. So when you're telling the story, it's like you heard a scratching sound, and then a little voice is, I know, all I want's my taily po. and,
Oh,
and everybody's hair starts to stand on end. So by the time you get it closer and closer, and the monster's coming.
yeah.
So
How
that one is probably one of my favorites because when you're telling it, it's just so campfire, and you can't, if you're outdoors at night and you hear that little voice, somebody using that little voice as the scratching is getting closer to you, it's perfect terror. Especially if somebody drops something and there's a loud noise right after it. So I
so
think that's always been one of my favorites.
how do you keep these old legends engaging for modern readers?
So one of the things that we do is it all the folklore collections for the whole spooky series, including Pacific Northwest. Um, what we do is what I do, and working with my editor, is it's just extensive amount of research. So it's like sometimes it's pages and pages, a thousand words or more worth of resources that go into them. But when we decided to do the series, we wanted to write each story as it would have been told, right? And so when you do the telling, like with Taily Poe, and using those different sounds um, to just create this visual in a person's mind. You tell the story in a storytelling style. So it's very different from like ghost hunting books where they're like, this is the place, this is the thing, here's the facts, here's what our equipment showed. This is telling the story as it would have been told mother to son, or at a Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts campfire, right? So each one that helps engage. So if you're looking for each of the stories, I'm trying to tell it in such a way that you will live it as if you're there.
Mm.
So whether you become the person or it's in first person, all the facts and facts meaning folklore facts, the way it was been told have been preserved, but it's told in the style of a story. And I think that's makes it very different from folklore versus, some of the other styles of ghost books
Mm-hmm.
that are out there. So yeah, I hope I got that
What do you
answer.
you did. What before I let you go, what do you hope that readers take away from not just this book, but this whole series of spooky tales?
You know, one of the things that's very important to me is that we don't lose the folklore of the individual folklore of our areas. Like the Pacific Northwest is so completely different from when I lived in Arizona, which had a different Wild West flavor, even though they were both part of the whole Wild West expansion. Um, but different Native American tribes bring their own cultures here. And what I'm finding is like the internet, and we tend to homogenize things, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. We tend to sort of like all start sharing to the point where it's all the same, but we're not the same. We should be rejoicing in the differences, and learning from one another. And so I don't want to lose that aspect, and that's one of the reasons why I bring back a lot of old stories, or I retell them in as close to the style as I can of each of the places that I visit, the people I interview. Um, I want to preserve that really amazing uniqueness that makes us residents of our states, residents of our regions. And I think the other thing that I really matters to me is that, especially if you're reading historical folklore, what if you pair it up with history? History is a lot of facts. And, sometimes school children
Mm-hmm.
will tell you that can get a little dry, but folklore is like this flip side of history. It's almost the social media of what was happening at the time. So you have a story that starts going around. It's the reaction to what's happening, whether it's, an abandoned building and something scary happened in it. And so stories grow up around that building. But it's the emotional reaction of the people of the time, of the people of the place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose that amazing part of us that makes us emotional beings, storytellers. To me, that's one of the most special things, is when you can find the emotional side of a historical event, and that tends to be our folklore stories.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time to talk with us about this very latest book. We've been talking with author Essie Schlosser about her latest book, Spooky Pacific Northwest Tales of Haunting, Strange Happenings, and Other Local Lore. You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudette.
The stories don't stop when this podcast does. Boise State Public Radio's Instagram gives you reels, updates, and snapshots from our reporters in the field. Follow Boise State Public Radio on Instagram today.